She really thought this was checkmate. That was the only sentence running through my head as Judge Ellison shuffled through the pile of papers in front of him, his bifocals sliding down his nose like they were trying to flee the room. It was the fourth day of testimony, of cold glances, posturing, and performative sighs from Dana's lawyer, a guy named Wexler who wore a $4,000 suit and a face that always looked like he smelled something faintly beneath him. Dana hadn't looked at me once, not since this circus began. Not when they played up the emotional toll of our marriage. Not when her best friend fabricated some nonsense about my controlling nature. Not even when Wexler theatrically passed around pictures of our home, labeling it hers like I'd been some squatter with a lucky toothbrush. And now, she leaned forward. Just enough for her hair to fall behind her ear. Just enough to whisper something smug to Wexler. Then she looked up, straight across the courtroom at me, and smirked. Her lips barely moved. "The prenup is ironclad," she mouthed. The confidence in her face made me think of a dog chewing on a grenade pin. I didn't flinch. I didn't smile. I just blinked. Once. Judge Ellison finally looked up and adjusted his glasses. "Mr. Harding, you've been quiet throughout these proceedings. Do you have any closing remarks before we recess for the final review?" I stood slowly. No rush. No dramatics. The creak of my chair was louder than anything I said. I walked to the front of the room, calm as a man ordering coffee. Wexler looked at me like I was about to whine about golf clubs or my shaving cream collection. Instead, I opened my folder. One piece of paper. One paragraph. Highlighted in yellow, barely even fancy. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. I just turned it toward the bench and slid it forward. Judge Ellison leaned in and began reading. Wexler craned his neck to see, and when he spotted the text, something in his face cracked. Not confusion. Not annoyance. Fear. Not for him. For her. He stiffened like a corpse and turned to Dana with a sudden, involuntary jerk. His lips twitched. He didn't say anything at first. Just grabbed her wrist tightly and whispered something too soft for the microphones. Her smirk faltered. Dana turned to me then, for the first time in days. Eyebrows tightening. Confusion creeping behind the armor of her courtroom makeup. "What is it?" she hissed at Wexler. He didn't answer. Just shook his head slowly. I finally spoke, my voice clear and quiet, the kind that forces people to lean in. "It's on page 7, clause 7C. You should read it." Judge Ellison cleared his throat. He looked back down at the page, then flipped through the attached exhibits. Slowly, methodically. "Clause 7C. He repeated, mostly to himself, as if testing it on his tongue. "In the event of marital infidelity involving undisclosed financial transactions, the entirety of marital assets reverts to the non-offending party." He looked up, eyes sharper now. "Is this your signature, Mrs. Harding?" Dana blinked. "What? Yes, but..." "And the financial records attached, these are verified?" Wexler didn't answer. He was too busy scanning the documents like a man seeing his own obituary. He looked up once and asked, quiet, urgent, barely above a whisper. "The house, the accounts, what did you do?" Dana turned pale. I stayed quiet. This wasn't a soap opera. I wasn't going to gloat or monologue. I'd spent 2 years preparing for this moment. I wasn't going to dilute it with noise. I returned to my seat. On the other side, Dana's hands were shaking now. Wexler tried to regroup, asking for a brief recess, his voice cracking like a high school debater who just realized his notes are out of order. Judge Ellison granted it. As soon as they stood, I saw it. The mask fell. Dana looked at me with something that finally resembled honesty. Not the performative scorn of the last 4 days. Not the Ice Queen routine she'd been perfecting since the mediation phase. No, this look was raw, desperate. And for the first time in our entire marriage, she finally understood what silence meant. Not indifference. Not defeat. Preparation. 2 years earlier, we were sitting across from each other in the office of a boutique family law firm. One of those places that smelled like leather and quiet judgment. Dana was all smiles, sipping from a reusable bottle that probably cost more than my monthly utilities back then. Her freshly manicured nails tapped impatiently against the armrest. She hated waiting, even more than she hated being questioned. "Don't take it personally," she said, without even looking up. "A prenup just makes sense. It's not about you. It's about me protecting what I had before us. Just being smart." Of course. She used that phrase a lot. Just being smart. Like when she streamlined my office space to convert it into her walk-in closet. Or when she suggested we move her money into an us account for tax efficiency. And especially when she shut down any talk about kids, Let's not be reckless, Thomas. Let's be smart. Dana believed she was smarter than me. She confused extroversion with intellect, speed with accuracy, control with wisdom. So I nodded, smiled, signed the intake forms with her. But that night, I stayed late at the office. I didn't sleep. I didn't pace. I wrote 31 clauses. Simple language. Mutual protections. Split property rights. Separate inheritances. Clause 7C was just one line, nestled between the retirement plan summary and the joint liability section. In the event of marital infidelity involving undisclosed financial transactions, the entirety of marital assets reverts to the non-offending party. No legalese. No smoke. No mirrors. Just precision. It wasn't hidden. It was just invisible. The kind of thing you miss when you skim with arrogance. The kind of thing lawyers miss when they assume they know what to look for. Her lawyer? Some mid-tier fixer named Arnold Halloran. Big talker. Billed like a surgeon. He gave the draft a 2-day turnaround and never even called to clarify a single line. I could tell from the way he handed it back, paper-clipped, barely annotated, that he hadn't read past page 5. He probably saw the clean formatting and assumed it was boilerplate. Dana signed it while FaceTiming her sister. Of course I trust him, she said, laughing at something off-screen. It's not like I'm marrying a con artist. I signed my copy a full day later at home. Quietly. Carefully. Then I locked the final PDF in a password-protected archive with a hash backup on a separate drive. I didn't think I'd use it. Not then. But I knew she'd test me eventually. Dana didn't like boundaries. Not ones she didn't draw herself. And sure enough, the shift came quicker than I expected. It started small. A weekend wellness retreat that turned out to be in Miami, not Sedona. A few missed receipts in our monthly reconciliation. Then a sudden fascination with private investing, usually pitched through some friend of her cousin's new boyfriend. And I said nothing, because I wasn't going to interrupt her. I was going to let her walk into it. What she didn't realize was that while she thought the prenup was a wall she built around herself, it was actually a corridor. One I designed. One with only one door, and she was walking toward it in heels. I scheduled a review with a different firm 6 months after she signed it. A friend of mine from college, now a partner at a white-glove asset litigation firm, walked through every line with me. When he got to Clause 7C, he chuckled. You know this is enforceable, right? That's the idea. She really signed this. She skimmed it. He shook his head. You're either a genius or a psychopath. I just smiled. Can't I be both? And still, I didn't act. I waited. Because Dana wasn't done yet. She never was. It started with a shrug. Specifically, the kind of offhand, patronizing shrug Dana used when she thought she was 2 steps ahead. Don't worry about it, she said, twisting the lid off a bottle of imported spring water. It's just some cleanup before things get messy. We were still technically married, still living under the same roof. Her in the master bedroom, me in what used to be the guest room and had become more of a holding cell. We passed each other like co-workers in a dying startup. The fridge had become a territorial zone. My food was labeled, hers was color-coded. Even our dog, Pickle, had figured out the silent war. He stopped sleeping on her side of the bed months ago. She said the word cleanup like she was discussing laundry. Like she wasn't talking about money. Our money. See, Dana fancied herself a strategist. But she was reckless with one thing, digital paper trails. Months before she even filed the divorce petition, she did something interesting. She opened a new joint account under both of our names. She never mentioned it, probably assuming I wouldn't see it until the discovery phase, if ever. To her, it was just another maneuver on a chessboard she believed she owned. What she didn't know was that I got the welcome packet in the mail. She had forgotten to opt out of paper statements. Rookie mistake. I didn't confront her. That's not what this was. Confrontation gives people a chance to squirm, to justify, to twist. What I wanted was documentation. So I waited. 3 weeks after the account opened, $240,000 vanished in 3 separate wire transfers, disguised under vague descriptors like consulting advance and vendor acquisition. But the destination accounts all pointed to one place. A shell corporation registered under her mother's business, Rosen Strategies LLC. A business that hadn't posted a legitimate profit since 2012. Dana must have thought it was brilliant. Moving the money to a family business, planning to reclaim it post-divorce without technically violating asset disclosures. If it wasn't so insulting, it might have been impressive. She even had the audacity to joke about it during brunch with her friends. I wasn't there, but one of them, Julie, had a habit of sending me screenshots when Dana got too bold. I still have the photo. Dana holding up a mimosa, captioned, "Spring cleaning isn't just for closets. Babe face blowing a kiss money with wings." Meanwhile, I was sitting in my office with a forensic accountant and a glass of bourbon, mapping every transaction on a whiteboard like a murder scene. Every dollar led back to her. Every transfer cross-verified by timestamps, IP addresses, login credentials. Dana did everything from her phone, on our Wi-Fi, logged in under her own name. It wasn't theft. It was a confession. Then came the cherry on top, an email. From her mother. To Dana. Subject line, the transfer, thank you. I stared at that message longer than I cared to admit. Not because I was surprised, but because of how casually it was written. Like this was normal. Like robbing your husband was just part of the ritual. Dana, thank you for moving everything over so quickly. This will give us the breathing room we needed. I'll hold it for now under our account until things blow over. Love you. She even attached a receipt for the business account ledger update. So thoughtful. I printed it all. The email, the statements, the Shell Corp registration. I built a dossier that looked like it came from a federal investigation. My accountant labeled every section. Color-coded. Indexed. I didn't even have to annotate it. The documents spoke for themselves. And still, I said nothing. I kept walking the dog. Kept brewing 2 cups of coffee each morning, knowing she'd only take one. Kept pretending we were still in that slow-motion limbo, where things were drifting toward inevitable paperwork and uncomfortable dinners with mutual friends. Because the trap was baited now. She thought she'd hidden the crime under the flag of marital housekeeping. But I had already invited the judge to the cleanup. The search didn't start with a bang. It started with a receipt. A Starbucks receipt, actually, tucked into a pile of her discarded grocery bags, wedged between kale chips and a $300 candle she claimed was for the soul. The total was $6.45. The card used? One I didn't recognize. And yet, our address was on the digital receipt. She'd used the cafe's Wi-Fi under our home network. At that moment, I didn't feel rage or betrayal. I felt confirmation. Dana had another account. And if there was one, there were more. That's when I called Matt Lindell, a forensic accountant who owed me a favor from years ago. The kind of guy who wore wrinkled suits and smelled like copier toner, but could follow money through a sewer and back. I need you to trace everything, I said. Quietly. He didn't ask why, just asked for a thumb drive. I handed him one loaded with every joint statement, every business filing, every partial login she'd left on the shared computer. First came the offshore corporation, registered in Belize, predictably, a shadow entity linked to Rosen Strategies, under the guise of import consulting. She'd funneled $28,000 there over 6 months, in $4,000 bursts, just under IRS radar. The transfers originated from an account named after her cousin Brian. Poor kid thought he was helping the family. Next was the car lease. She'd bragged about the Range Rover she helped Brian get, just something to get him on his feet, she said, twirling her wine glass like a movie villain. Except the lease was in his name. The payments were made through her Shell LLC, and the insurance? Paid from the bridal photography fund. She told me she closed 2 years ago. Matt found the crypto last. A mix of Ethereum and some meme coin I'd never heard of, Shibmaster or something equally idiotic. She thought it was untraceable. It wasn't. She used her usual alias, d.m.harding82, which just so happened to match her Pinterest username, and her Uber profile, and the Netflix account she set up for her mother. People leave fingerprints everywhere. Dana left financial footprints in concrete. We traced the wallet to 4 cash-outs, one to a spa retreat in Arizona, one to a high-end boutique in Soho, one to a weird luxury dating app one pretended not to notice, and one straight into a trust fund labeled the Jade Initiative. That one caught my attention. Matt smirked when he showed me the trust. This is where it gets spicy. The Jade Initiative was set up as a women's empowerment grant, administered through an obscure startup bank. Looked noble on the surface. But dig deeper and it was just a parked account, inaccessible to anyone but the founder and one administrator. The founder? Dana Harding. The administrator? Her mother. I asked Matt how solid the links were. He slid a folder across my desk. Each transfer. Each timestamp. IP logs. Device IDs. Login locations. One even pinged from your Wi-Fi while she was supposedly getting groceries. If a judge doesn't believe this, they're blind or bought. The thing about Dana, she didn't steal because she needed the money. She stole because she thought she was too smart to get caught. She'd built her own little empire of lies, supported by fragile names and fake companies, assuming the sheer complexity would bury the truth. She didn't count on someone documenting it all, piece by piece, like a surgeon before the cut. I didn't interfere. I didn't freeze the accounts. Didn't warn her. I wanted every lie to mature. I wanted her to keep building the tower until the weight of her own brilliance brought it down. At night, I'd sit in the kitchen while she was on the phone in the next room, whispering into speaker like a high schooler sneaking calls past curfew. I moved it already. No, it's under Brian's name. It's clean. I told you, the crypto is off-grid. He doesn't even know I own it. He still thinks the bridal account is closed. Yes, I'm sure. The quiet thrill in her voice was almost erotic. Like the secret made her feel more alive than our entire marriage had. Let her feel it, I thought. Because I wasn't hunting anymore. I was archiving. Every transaction, every login, every screenshot, placed carefully into a growing file, time-stamped, notarized, backed up 3 different ways. This wasn't just proof. It was a eulogy. It was a Thursday. Cold, gray, the kind of sky that makes everything feel like a funeral even when nobody's died yet. I chose the coffee shop carefully. Not too quiet, not too crowded, just enough noise to make it neutral ground. I got there early, took a seat by the window, ordered a black coffee and a biscotti I had no intention of eating. When she arrived, she didn't sit down immediately. She just stood there, one hand on her hip, sunglasses still on inside like some kind of washed-up influencer. You said this was urgent, she snapped, sliding into the chair across from me like she was doing me a favor. She didn't remove the sunglasses. Didn't even look me in the eye. I didn't respond right away. I let her marinate in the silence. She finally sighed. Thomas, I really don't have time for another guilt trip. If this is about the house. It's not, I said. She raised one eyebrow. Then, I just want you to make sure your lawyer reads the entire prenup, I said calmly. Start to finish. No skimming. She scoffed so loudly 2 tables overturned their heads. Seriously? You dragged me here for that. I didn't answer. She leaned forward, her voice low and loaded with venom. You're not going to get a dime, Thomas. Not the house. Not the accounts. Not even the dog. I'm not asking for anything, I said. I'm asking you to read. Dana's mouth curled into a smirk. Not the playful kind. The one she used when she wanted to humiliate someone gently, like a cat playing with a dying mouse. We've got this covered, she said, pushing back her chair and standing up. My attorney is very thorough. I nodded. I'm sure he is. She left without saying goodbye. 24 hours later, I got the email. Subject line, your concern. From Arnold Halloran. Thomas, appreciate your suggestion, but rest assured, we've reviewed the prenup in full. You may want to prepare your disclosures accordingly. We'll see you in court. Best. Arnold Halloran, ESQ. There it was. Confirmation. They hadn't seen it. They thought they'd won before the game even started. I closed the email, leaned back in my chair, and exhaled, not out of relief, but out of resolve. That was the precise moment I stopped thinking of this as a divorce and started thinking of it as an execution. In Dana's mind, she was already on the beach somewhere with my money, her name on the deed, sipping cocktails paid for by my quiet compliance. She'd tell her friends I'd just folded, that I was too weak to fight, maybe even call me pathetic. She always underestimated quiet. 2 days after the coffee meeting, she transferred another $8,000 to Rosen Strategies. Matt flagged it instantly. He even called me. She's doubling down. Good, I said. Let her. The deeper she sank into her own illusion of victory, the harder she was tying the noose. She was out there playing poker with my cash, bluffing hard, smiling like a woman who knew the river card before it hit the table. But I wasn't bluffing. I didn't have to be. The next week, she met with Wexler and started her court prep in earnest. I knew because Julie, the same brunch friend who leaked the mimosa photo, texted me. She's giddy. Said her lawyer's going to burn your financial life to the ground. Her words. Burn it? I'd already doused it in kerosene. She just hadn't found the match yet. Meanwhile, I updated my dossier. Every new transfer. Every side whisper. Every click she thought was untraceable. Clause 7C was sitting quietly on page 7, highlighted, annotated, time-stamped. I'd printed 10 copies. Bound them. One for the judge. One for my attorney. One for Dana. The others? Insurance. Dana never noticed the shift. She thought I was avoiding eye contact because I was scared. She thought my silence was guilt. She told a mutual friend, He's not fighting because he knows he'll lose. It's kind of sad. Sad. No, it was deliberate. Because when the wave comes, it's not the yelling that saves you. It's the man who already knows how to swim. Courtroom Day 4. The air is thick with ego and citrus-scented wood polish. Dana's team is at full strut, tailored, coiffed, caffeinated. You'd think they were pitching a startup to venture capitalists, not dismantling a marriage. Her lawyer, Wexler, paces like he owns the building, his voice smooth as lacquered mahogany, narrating the financial statement as if reading a bedtime story to the judge. Which brings us to the joint assets, Your Honor. As itemized in Exhibit E, we've disclosed all liquid holdings, real estate, and jointly accrued debt, all accounted for and signed. He ends with a bow of the head, the kind that suggests case closed, and hands the judge a pristine white binder with gold tabs. I recognize Dana's handwriting on one of the dividers, property, hers, underlined twice. I don't speak. I don't move. The judge nods politely and begins flipping pages. The gallery is quiet. Even the court clerk has stopped typing. Wexler leans back like he just landed a triple axel. Dana crosses her legs the way she always did when she thought she had the upper hand. Right ankle hooked behind the left, foot twitching like a metronome of smugness. The statement is a masterpiece of omission. I know it by heart. I've already dissected it with my accountant. Not listed, the Belize account under Rosen Strategies. Not listed, the $42,000 in crypto split across 4 cold wallets. Gifted to a cousin who once asked me how to spell Ethereum. Not listed, the BMW leased under her mother's business but paid monthly by a shared trust Dana opened and promptly forgot to close. Not listed, the vacation condo in Scottsdale, conveniently titled under her mother's name, but furnished and maintained through a series of Venmo transactions labeled as medical reimbursements. 6 accounts. All dirty. All traceable. All excluded. I say nothing. Wexler keeps stealing glances at me, waiting for the storm. He's expecting drama. Outburst. Resistance. He's still thinking I'm the desperate husband trying to cling to his half of the spoils. He doesn't realize I'm not in the same game anymore. The judge raises an eyebrow. Mr. Wexler, are you certain this is a complete disclosure of marital assets? Wexler, cool as a corpse, nods. Absolutely, Your Honor. It has been thoroughly vetted. Every dollar is accounted for. The judge pauses, looks at Dana, then at me. Mr. Harding, do you have any objections at this time? I stand, but I don't object. I just walk, calmly, slowly, to the front of the courtroom. I reach into my case and pull out a folder. It's not gold-tabbed. It's not leather-bound. It's plain, manila, the kind of folder someone would overlook unless they knew exactly what was in it. I place it on the table, open it to a single page. No theatrics, just precision. The room tightens. Even the bailiff leans forward a little. The judge peers over his glasses, then gestures. I turn the document toward him and slide it across. Page 7, Clause 7C, I say softly. And supporting documentation tabbed behind. The moment stretches. The judge starts reading. Wexler leans forward and then freezes. Like something just kicked him in the ribs. Dana's smile is gone. The judge flips to the exhibits. Wire transfers, notarized statements, financial forensics, and yes, a full-page printout of her mother's email thanking Dana for the help with the transfer. Highlighted. With metadata. Dana's foot isn't twitching anymore. Her jaw tightens. The silence in the room isn't empty. It's loaded. You can feel the lawyers recalculating their odds, the tension buzzing like static behind every still breath. The judge doesn't speak. He flips. And flips again. And then, he looks at Wexler. There's no outburst. No gavel slam. Just a very specific question, spoken quietly but sharp enough to pierce every inch of the room. Mr. Wexler, were you aware of this clause? Wexler opens his mouth, but nothing comes out. His lips move. His throat swallows. But there's no sound. Just heat rising up his collar. Dana leans toward him, whispering frantically. His hands tremble as he flips through the exhibit, seeing it now, for the first time, the clause that dismantles his entire argument like a detonator pressed gently under their foundation. The judge turns back to me. Mr. Harding, would you like to submit this into the official record? I nod. Yes, Your Honor. Then I close the folder and return to my seat. Dana is no longer looking at me. She's staring at the desk, like if she focuses hard enough, the wood might swallow her whole. Wexler finally leans over and hisses something in her ear. Her eyes widen. She doesn't understand it yet. But she will. Judge Ellison adjusted his glasses. Clause 7C, he said aloud, scanning the page. I see. There was no drama in his voice, just that quiet, measured cadence that comes when someone realizes they've been holding a grenade with the pin half pulled. He cleared his throat. In the event of marital infidelity involving undisclosed financial transactions, the entirety of marital assets reverts to the non-offending party. Dana blinked. Once. Twice. Then she turned her head so slowly toward Wexler it almost looked rehearsed. Except it wasn't. He was already pale, his face frozen somewhere between dread and disbelief. The kind of look men wear when they realize they've been playing poker with a loaded deck and betting someone else's house. Wait, Dana muttered, confused. What is that even? The house, Wexler whispered, lips barely moving, voice low and urgent. The accounts, what did you do? Dana recoiled. What do you mean, what did I do? You said the prenup was fine. The judge raised a hand, silencing them both without a word. Mr. Harding, he said, eyes still scanning. Do you have supporting documentation regarding the referenced financial transactions? Yes, Your Honor. I stood again, calm as a librarian, and handed the clerk a set of labeled folders, each with a single tab: shell transfers, trust assets, crypto movements, vehicle lease, email correspondence, and timeline of events. No dramatics, no showmanship, just a series of facts so meticulously laid out they practically stapled themselves together. Ellison took the first folder. His eyes moved slowly at first, then faster, flipping pages like a man realizing the floor beneath him isn't floor at all. It's glass. And it's cracking. He looked up. All of this is confirmed. Yes, I said. Each transaction is time-stamped, traced to its origin, and tied directly to the offending party. Dana's lips parted. The offending? You're calling me? The judge raised his hand again. Mrs. Harding, please. Wexler leaned toward her, hissing now, no more decorum. Jesus, Dana. You wired funds to your mother's company. You opened a joint account to hide assets from the declaration process. That clause makes all of it his. I didn't cheat. There was no affair. You don't need to sleep with someone, I said, voice level, to commit infidelity against your own household. You just need to lie, hide money, break trust. You did all three. Her eyes darted to the judge, to Wexler, back to me. But he knew. He knew about that account. He didn't say anything. Correct, I said. I was documenting. It hung in the air like a dropped match in a dry field. The judge flipped another page. Then another. He adjusted his glasses again, slower this time, like the weight of what he was seeing required manual focus. Behind me, the courtroom was silent. The gallery had gone stiff. The opposing bench sat still, like a team watching their coach bleed out mid-play. The judge turned to Wexler. Did your client disclose these transactions during discovery? Wexler opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked at Dana like a man realizing he's handcuffed to a sinking ship. She mentioned a small restructuring of some family assets. $240,000 isn't small, I said flatly. Neither is laundering it through a business that technically hasn't been profitable since 2012. Ellison's eyes narrowed. Is that accurate? Yes, I said. And I've submitted documentation from her mother's LLC showing no active business income for the past 8 years. The email she sent thanking Dana for the help is in tab F. The judge flipped to it. He read silently for 10 seconds, then looked at Dana. Did you or did you not authorize this transfer, Mrs. Harding? Dana didn't answer. She stared at the bench in front of her, her perfectly polished fingernails digging into the wood like she was trying to claw her way out of the moment. Ellison sighed. Not the tired kind. The disappointed kind. Like a professor realizing the student plagiarized the final paper. The clause is legally binding. It was signed by both parties and reviewed by your counsel. Dana turned to Wexler. You said it was boilerplate. He shook his head. You said you read it. No. You were supposed to read it, she hissed. My paralegal scanned it for red flags. I sat back down. I didn't need to say another word. The damage was done. Every asset, real estate, retirement, brokerage, trusts, was now in play under a clause she had dismissed as just filler. One sentence had just set her financial life on fire. And the lighter fluid? She poured it herself. Dana looked at me, eyes wide, breath shallow. Not angry, not even defensive. Afraid. For the first time in her life, Dana was afraid. Not of me, of what she signed. Let's take a brief recess, Judge Ellison said, his voice sharp with finality. The gavel didn't slam, It didn't need to. The silence that followed was heavier than wood. Dana didn't move at first. Just sat there, blinking slowly like her brain was buffering reality, the edges of her composure unraveling thread by thread. Wexler was already on his feet, papers clenched in one fist, gesturing sharply toward the hallway like he was swatting flies that weren't there. She stood, unsteady. Her heels wobbled once before she caught herself. The smugness was gone. That invisible crown she'd been wearing for weeks, tilted, cracked, slipping. They disappeared behind the heavy wooden doors of the side chamber. I remained seated. I didn't glance after them. I just leaned back slightly, eyes on the empty judge's bench, fingers calmly interlocked. I didn't need to hear the conversation, but I did. Through the paneled wall, just faintly, you could make out voices. At first, low and frantic. Then, Wexler's voice rising. How long have you known this clause existed? Pause. You didn't think a transfer that large would raise a flag? You labeled it vendor acquisition, Dana. A judge isn't an idiot. Then a muffled sob. A slam. A sharp hiss. You told me he was weak. You said he'd roll over. You said. Then silence. 5 minutes passed. 10. When the doors opened again, Dana walked in first. But she wasn't the same woman who'd strutted in 4 days earlier in a fitted blazer and a smirk like she was entering a spa, not a courtroom. She looked smaller, face flushed, eyes glassy, shoulders drawn inward like she was trying to disappear into herself. She had powdered her face during the recess, but it only made the blotches more obvious. Her lipstick was uneven. The hand gripping her bag was trembling. Wexler followed her, jaw clenched so tightly it looked wired shut. He walked straight to my attorney and asked for a sidebar. Whispers. Tension. Dana stood behind him like a ghost at her own funeral. My lawyer turned to me and said, under his breath, they want to renegotiate. I almost laughed. Renegotiate. After 4 days of smug grins, doctored numbers, and theatrical sighs? After trying to paint me as some bumbling, helpless husband while she siphoned assets like a tech CEO hiding IPO fraud? My lawyer waited for my response. I shook my head once. No. He nodded, turned back to Wexler, and simply said, the clause is enforceable. She signed it. It's done. I didn't have to speak. Dana looked at me anyway. It wasn't the stare of a woman pleading for a second chance. It was recognition. Recognition that she'd not only underestimated me, she'd built her entire strategy around the assumption that I was too gentle, too passive, too harmless. And now, she was learning that silence isn't weakness. It's loading. The judge returned. Dana didn't meet his gaze. She fumbled with a tissue, but didn't use it. Her hands had no idea what to do. Are both parties ready to proceed? Ellison asked. Wexler hesitated, like a man walking toward a guillotine. Yes, Your Honor. He didn't sound confident anymore. Just beaten. Broken. Done. I could tell Dana wanted to speak. I saw it. Her mouth opened for just a second, the tiniest inhale. But she didn't. There was nothing left to argue. Her entire position, her narrative, her leverage, her confidence, had collapsed in under 15 minutes. 4 days of performance unraveled by one line she didn't bother reading and a trail of numbers she thought no one would follow. No more vendor acquisitions. No more cleanups. No more brunch photos with smug captions. Just silence. Crushing. Inescapable. And in that silence, Dana finally learned the most painful truth of all. The real danger was never the man who yelled. It was the one who watched and waited. The ruling didn't take an hour. Judge Ellison returned after a short recess, this time with no deliberation, no soft preamble, no performance. His tone was clinical, precise, as if he were conducting surgery and didn't want to touch more than necessary. The prenuptial agreement, signed willingly by both parties, is valid and enforceable, he stated flatly. Clause 7C is clear in its language, and the documentation submitted provides compelling evidence of breach. No emotion, no righteous speech, just cold facts delivered in a room that had gone dead quiet. Therefore, he continued, flipping a single page, the court awards Mr. Harding full retention of all marital assets, including the primary residence, the joint retirement and investment accounts, and the business property registered under Harding and Roth Holdings. Mrs. Harding will retain the personal vehicle currently in her name and any items classified as non-marital possessions. Dana didn't blink. I don't think she could. The words came like ice water, fast, numbing, irreversible. The car. That was all she had left. Not the house she'd remodeled to her liking. Not the pool she once bragged about on Instagram stories. Not the joint accounts she had tried to hollow out from the inside like a termite in heels. Her mother's company was implicated in the ruling as a recipient of concealed transfers. Restitution proceedings would begin pending further review. Even the bridal photography fund had a subpoena waiting in the wings. Judge Ellison closed the file. This court is adjourned. The gavel tapped once. Not hard, not loud, but final. The courtroom began to empty. Wexler didn't say a word. He packed his papers with trembling hands, his knuckles white from clenching. He didn't look at Dana. Not once. Didn't pat her on the shoulder. Didn't mutter a cliché about appeals or next steps. Just slid everything into his leather case, snapped it shut, and walked out, faster than decorum allowed. Dana stood there, alone. For the first time, she wasn't playing victim or victor. She wasn't performing. She wasn't posturing. She was just still, frozen in place, as if moving would confirm that all of this was real. I walked past her without looking. She turned, slowly. "Thomas." Her voice cracked like glass underfoot. I didn't respond. I kept walking through the marble hallway, down the stairs, past the stone columns she used to love posing in front of when she thought she'd walk out of this courtroom triumphant. Outside, the sky was crisp, the air sharp with the scent of coming rain. My car was parked where it always was, third row from the east steps. Reliable. Predictable. She followed me out. "Wait," she said, picking up speed. "Can we just talk?" I reached the car. She reached for my sleeve. I turned just enough to make eye contact. But I didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. Everything had already been said, in silence, in documents, in every unchecked box she thought was just legal filler. The house was mine. The accounts were mine. Even the legal oxygen she tried to breathe had been cut off. I opened the door. She took a half step forward. "Please," she whispered. I got in and closed the door. Her hand hovered in the air, still reaching, still clinging to something that no longer existed. My window stayed up. Engine on. She stepped back as I pulled away, just enough to avoid the tires. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I didn't need to. Behind me, her phone lit up. "Incoming call, Mom." She didn't answer it, but I imagined what that call sounded like. Screaming. Accusations. The crash of entitlement against the cold wall of reality. Her mother, the co-conspirator, now collateral damage. Her cousin? He ghosted her 2 days earlier when my attorney sent him a formal inquiry into asset concealment. The moment Brian realized his name was on a lease attached to a fraud investigation, he vanished like smoke. Deleted his socials. Stopped returning messages. Wexler? Gone. Word in the courthouse was he walked straight into the elevator and didn't stop pacing until the building lobby. His final act as Dana's counsel was not a statement, but an exit. And Dana? Dana stood on the courthouse steps, the queen of ashes, holding a designer bag that no longer held keys to anything. Her kingdom was gone, all by her own hand. She thought she was clever. She was just careless. And now, with the verdict echoing in her ears and her world shrinking to the size of a compact car and some frozen accounts, she finally understood. I wasn't trying to win. I was making sure she lost. 2 weeks after the courthouse echo faded, Dana sat alone in her high-rise apartment, the one she rented after the ruling, still clinging to a sense of status she no longer possessed. The walls were white. Too white. Like an art gallery with nothing worth showing. The Range Rover was parked downstairs. Her last trophy. She hadn't driven it in days. Gas prices weren't the issue. Pride was. Driving it meant admitting what she no longer had to come home to. That morning, she'd stood in the kitchen scrolling through texts that had dried up like a drained well. Friends who had once filled her group chats with champagne emojis and spa invites had gone quiet. Julie stopped responding altogether. Even her mother's calls came less frequently. Always angrier, always tinged with an accusation that Dana couldn't fight off anymore. She was halfway through a cup of coffee that had gone cold when the knock came. Not the doorbell. A knock. She opened it to find a man in a navy jacket with a clipboard. Delivery for Dana Harding. She nodded. Signed. The envelope was thin, brown, unbranded. She took it to the kitchen counter and sliced the top with the back of a butter knife. Inside were 2 items. The first, a copy of the prenup. The original one. Still crisp, still sharp in its language. Clause 7C circled in black ink. Her signature on page 12, dated and notarized. Below it, a handwritten note on cream-colored stationery. I told you to read everything. No name, no greeting, no emotion, just that. The second item made her hands shake. A joint account statement. Their joint account. Final balance, $0. Zeroed out. Closed. Not frozen. Not paused. Just gone. She didn't cry. Not immediately. She didn't even move. She just stared. At her own signature, at the note, at the cold math printed in black and white. It was all legal. All final. All devastating. She dropped the envelope. It slid from her fingers and hit the tile floor with a faint thud, contents fanning out like a quiet autopsy. She sat down. Her world hadn't exploded. It had eroded. Slowly. Silently. Piece by piece. He hadn't shouted. Hadn't slammed doors. Hadn't thrown objects or threats or ultimatums. He'd watched. Prepared. And dismantled her. Without ever needing to raise his voice. No public meltdowns. No dramatic confrontations. No late-night screaming matches or voicemail rants. Just a line in a document. A trail of numbers. And silence. The silence was the worst part. Because in it, she could hear every choice she made. Every dollar she thought was invisible. Every lie she told herself about being smarter, more in control, untouchable. He'd never been cold. He'd been calculating. And now he was gone. Not blocked. Not ghosted. Just absent. In a way that made her stomach twist more than fury ever could. She picked up the prenup again and stared at the circled clause. She remembered brushing it off when he handed her the draft. Standard stuff, right? She had asked. He had nodded, sipping tea, eyes unreadable. Read everything. But she didn't. She never did. Because she thought she'd never need to. Because she thought she was untouchable. She looked at the envelope, still open. No return address. No initials. Not even a signature. It was the final move in a game she never realized she was playing until she'd already lost. And somewhere out there, Thomas, quiet, unreadable Thomas, was probably living in that house she once redesigned without asking him, drinking coffee from the mug she hated, opening drawers she assumed would always be hers. But he wasn't smiling. That wasn't his style. He was quiet, not weak. And that silence? It had teeth.